America's changing stance on the war in Ukraine has been highlighted at the United Nations, where its UN envoy voted twice alongside Russia. First, the two countries opposed a European drafted resolution condemning Moscow's actions and supporting Ukraine's territorial integrity. Then they backed a US resolution calling for an end to the conflict but containing no criticism of Russia. It comes as the French President Emmanuel Macron says a truce between Ukraine and Russia could be agreed in the coming weeks, following talks with President Trump in the White House amid straining US-Europe relations. He is the first European leader to visit since Trump's inauguration, ahead of the arrival of the UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer on Thursday. Meanwhile, in France, 2 people have been arrested in relation to an arson attack on the Russian consulate in Marseille on Monday. Prosecutors called the pair major individuals. In Ukraine, air raid alerts have been sounded again today. Overnight, Poland deployed aircraft to secure its airspace after Russia launched strikes targeting western Ukraine. The BBC's Joe Inwood reports.
In northern Ukraine, new troops are still being trained, even as the war enters its 4th year. The cost has been huge, but this country appears to be holding on. It's done so through the effort of men like Evhen, who says Ukraine is making more of its own weapons and will continue to do so.
It's good to get help from abroad. Help won't last forever. It's here today, it might be gone tomorrow.
And that point has been brought home by the dramatic change in US policy. Once Ukraine's greatest ally, Donald Trump has started repeating Moscow lies about Kiev starting the war. And so yesterday's visit of French President Emmanuel Macron to the White House had extra significance.
Again, the relationship's been very special with France and very special with this gentleman on my right.
They've always got on well, but there were points of disagreement.
Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid. We paid 60% of the total effort, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money, to be clear.
And that was not the only crack in the transatlantic alliance.
We need to reconfirm that the aggression should be condemned and discredited, not rewarded.
In an extraordinary development at the UN, European countries and the US found themselves backing different resolutions on Ukraine, with America on the same side as Russia, Belarus and North Korea. While in Kyiv, Ukraine's remaining allies took part in events to commemorate 3 years of war and talks aimed at ensuring the sacrifices they've made will not have been in vain. Joe Inwood, BBC News.
Well, our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse gave more details about the reaction from Kyiv to the talks between Macron and Trump.
Well, we've had no specific reaction to a meeting between Emmanuel Macron and Donald Trump here. Instead, the focus has been on Ukraine's own rallying cry to its remaining allies as America throws the gauntlet down, really, challenges Europe to try and step up where it is less willing to do so. We're going to see Sir Keir Starmer follow suit, where he will visit Donald Trump in the White House to try and bridge a widening gap between Europe and America. So here, instead, we have seen a continuation, really, of military pledges, an announcement of new sanctions against Russia by the likes of the European Union, and I think it's a departure from the alignment we're seeing, certainly with the United Nations votes we've seen, with the softening of language from Washington. Here we are still seeing a country still at war, and its European allies trying to adopt a stronger stance as possible in the absence of America. But what's reflected, I think, by Emmanuel Macron and Sir Keir Starmer going to Washington is the fact that they still need America for a military assurance if fighting was to break out after a ceasefire was agreed here. But for now, it seems that more of Ukraine's closer allies are more willing to put boots on the ground, to send troops here to enforce some kind of ceasefire. At the moment, they're keen to stress it wouldn't be in a confrontational capacity, but there is no guarantee that fighting would not break out when you consider that Russia will continue, it looks like, to occupy a fifth of Ukraine, and that would involve a sizable military presence.
James Waterhouse there. Well, joining me now is political commentator, author and journalist Christine Ockrent. Thanks for being with us, Christine. It was fascinating to watch the public interactions yesterday with Macron and Trump. Just first of all, what did you make of the overall, the body language, the precise language from what we saw?
Well, I think there was some effort on both sides to make it look, fairly friendly. No hostile confrontation. But it is obvious that the transatlantic gap is widening. And there was that very interesting moment where Donald Trump, as usual, being carried away by his alternative facts, said, oh, Europeans are getting their money back from Ukraine. And then Macron very calmly put his hand on Trump's arm and said, well, no, actually, no. Europeans paid 60% of the aid provided to Ukraine, and, loans are the same as the US. And that was the only moment where Trump was sort of slightly off balance. Not that it mattered much, because obviously he kept on repeating that the old style American diplomacy is over and he wants to do things afresh again. And as your correspondent pointed out, what is absolutely unbelievable is at the same time the US voting at the General Assembly alongside with Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
I mean, but there is though potentially a deal coming, according to Trump, and quite a shift if what he said yesterday is true, that Russia would accept EU peacekeepers, because that is not what Sergei Lavrov said at the Saudi meeting, after the Saudi meeting with Marco Rubio. If that is the case, if Russia does accept that, and if Zelenskyy is going to travel to the US to sign a minerals deal in the next week or two, does it look likely that this war will stop?
Well, there has been no commitment whatsoever on the American side yesterday that the US would provide the indispensable backstop to an European force, which wouldn't be a military engaged force. It would be there to actually confirm that the ceasefire is being respected on both sides.
But if the US has such a strong financial interest in these rare earth minerals, they will surely ensure the security of Ukraine.
Yes, but the irony is that most of these rare earth, lithium, and so on are actually in the Donbass, in the area actually controlled, in the Ukrainian area controlled by Russian troops. And so that's why Putin said yesterday, oh, wonderful, if actually the US pays for our exploiting those mineral resources. So you're right, that may be a point where Trump may think, well, if that's our investment, we might as well try and protect it. But it's all very illusional, because these rare earths, all these haven't been really explored. The map is still very vague. And as we all know, these minerals are extremely difficult to extract. So let's not put, the plow before the actual ceasefire agreement. I mean, that's really what matters. And the problem is that Donald Trump is using Vladimir Putin's wording. It is, again, absolutely, I can't even find the words. I think we're all absolutely flabbergasted by the U-turn of American foreign policy.
Christine Ockrent, we will have to leave it there, but thank you so much for being with us.